Okay. I call this meeting of the Hamilton City School Board of Education come to order. Mr. Frazier would call the roll.
Mrs. Baker?
Here.
Mr. Davidson?
Here.
Dr. Kopus?
Here.
Mrs. Matthews?
Here.
Mr. Sprague?
Here.
Thank you. Believe we've have an item on the agenda. Mrs. Blevins, you want to discuss that?
Yes, the item actually is talking about a guest speaker that we have for an upcoming professional development training at our all-staff showcase in January. Dr. Kopus reached out to me last night to just ask about the board to have some conversation around it. So Dr. Kopus, do you want to?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And by the way, Mrs. Blevins, I appreciate you addressing that question. I was just a little surprised when I was looking at the consent agenda to see that. Of course, that's the first time I've been involved with anything like that. I don't know, I don't have any experience with who the guest speaker was, and I don't know if it's correct to refer to him as a motivational speaker. And I certainly mean no disrespect to anyone, but I got to be honest with you, I think that's ridiculous to spend $15,000 to listen to anyone speak. And also, I'll be honest with you, I mean, I've listened to the President of the United States speak. I've listened to brilliant educators, brilliant doctors. I just can't imagine what he could impart, he or she could impart in that brief a period of time that would validate that kind of an expense. Now, I've also been educated a little bit. Apparently, the district has funds that are earmarked for that type of thing. But I would submit to you, if we have the possibility to spend those funds in a different manner, that's certainly what I would support. I just think that's way excessive, and that's just my opinion.
But also those funds that are being used, they're not rollover, and that they're earmarked for professional development of our teachers for us to have the opportunity for them to have a guest speaker of that caliber to be able to pour into them. So that's what those dollars are earmarked specifically. So it's not like we could just take that money and say, hey, we're going to go buy X, Y, and Z, or we're going to allocate those dollars and put them in this bucket to save them for this time, because that's money that then goes back that we could be using, again, to pour into our teachers who pour every single day. So that's my opinion on feeling okay with signing off on that type of price tag, is because, and then also a lot of people refer to the person that's coming to speak to a lot of his expertise in the institute that he has, so they already glean from his knowledge and his wealth and his expertise and his motivation. You're already being motivated by him. So having him here live and in color, I think will only enhance their experience. And again, we have those specific dollars earmarked to be able to do this. So I think it would be amazing for our teachers to experience that, have a time to be able to have be poured into. It's a day of health, it's a day of wealth, it's a day of just them being able to glean from somebody who they look up to and respect. So, and I know you said you would not pay that much for anybody to speak, but I think in this day and age, people do have expenses, and that is this person's, that's their expertise, that's their field, and that's their knowledge that they're pouring. And I believe that, I believe that is good that we are looking out for our teachers to want to pour into them on this one specific day. So that's my 2 cents on it, and that's my thoughts about it.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts, but I have a few questions for you, Ms. Matthews.
Sure.
Do you know who the guest speaker is?
The guy that's coming to speak?
Yes.
I haven't heard him specifically the motivations, but I've heard his name, and I've heard people talk about him, highly talk about him. I haven't heard him
What does he do?
What is his expertise?
So I guess here's the thing. Dr. Kopus, Mr. Davidson, that I'm not the one who's being grilled about this or who you should be Q&A in. It's our teachers, I said, that look up to him and that are motivated by him. And I agree that from what the reviews that I've heard, people that I've heard talk about him have regarded him very highly. I have not personally experienced him. I'm actually looking forward to experiencing him come and speak to our teachers and our staff. So me personally, no, I have not been a partaker of this person that's coming. So I'm not the one to ask, but I do agree that if the dollars are there to be spent and if they're not rollover dollars, then I think that we should go ahead and take that money and to invest in our teachers.
Yeah.
So let me ask if you or provide some clarity on this piece. The dollars that are used that both Dr. Kopus and Mrs. Matthews referred to are Title IIA dollars. So those are not locally generated dollars. Those come from the state that are restricted dollars. So we have particular areas of focus that we must spend those dollars. If those dollars are not spent, we send them back. We sometimes get carryover. That's how the state determines what future allocations are based on how much we use them. The spirit behind that fund is for professional development. It's to help offset the cost of continuing to train our teachers. We have done our showcase every other year for the last number of years. We have always had a keynote speaker come in that anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 of those allocated funds. To give you a point of reference, a school district, to kind of, I know you mentioned being new to that and not really having that point of reference, you're going to see later on our agenda tonight, the money that is flowed through our district is $196,000. That is how much is provided to our district for these types of expenses. They can't be, I know you mentioned on some of these other uses, they can't be used other than for related of training our staff in some capacity.
Okay.
So that's kind of what these dollars are. You can
Well,
provide.
I understand that, Mrs. Blevins, and I respect that, and thank you for the information. But another question for Ms. Matthews. If we look beyond what I think, look beyond what you think, how do we know what the teachers think? How do we know that that's how they want to spend those funds? And that
Bill,
they
I would
feel-
I would like to break in real fast. I think that we had a committee that made that decision, that we have to trust that that committee is working on behalf of the teachers. It's not just the administrative team. It is this committee that has made that decision.
Oh, so it was a committee that had teachers on it?
This committee is administrators that are on that committee.
All right, so teachers.
However,
So it wasn't teachers.
however, we do provide, every single time we do any sort of professional development, we provide a survey to get that feedback. Our showcase, including our keynote, we ask specific questions on each aspect of it, so it's not just, how was your overall experience? How would you rate our keynote speaker? How would you rate our breakout sessions? It is the highest of all ratings that we receive for any PD that we do in the district throughout the school year. So we do get their feedback to take into next account. As far as his expertise, he is a teacher in the field. So he works, he is a motivational speaker that focuses on staff wellness. We have heard that time and time again from our staff. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're feeling underappreciated in the whole realm of the world. The job is hard. And so when we have shifted, when we first started our keynote speakers, they were more just, here's the next educational piece, here's this. We have shifted those to more the staff wellness component, even our sessions that we offer. If you remember last time, we had yoga for staff to do. We had therapy dogs for them to experience, to truly fill their bucket. Because if our staff aren't feeling well, how can they take care of the kids in their charge? And so that is one of the criteria. The committee does have criteria that they look when they are analyzing what we're looking for. I ask them to provide that rationale to me that I'm happy to share with the board on their reason for it. It is hard to get everyone's consensus on what that looks like beforehand of a particular survey. This gentleman was chosen partly because some of the work that he's doing with PBIS, which is a big push in our district, he has done quite a bit. He actually works at the Ron Clark Academy, which is something that some of our house systems have built. We've sent teachers actually out to visit and to be a part of that in past years. And so we thought it carries on the message, but also provides that wellness and motivation to staff. So that is why that was chosen.
Let me make a comment here. Number one, having been in my years at United Way, I'm familiar with what it costs from a Speakers Bureau perspective. This is not out of line to get a good quality speaker. The other thing that I'm going to say is this is, and please, in all due respect, Dr. Kopis, this is micromanaging our administration. I don't understand if we have to look at a line item of $15,000 on a budget of, how big's our budget? Total?
Total budget, total funds is somewhere around $156 million.
Okay, so we hire administrators, we hire the superintendent and the treasurer to manage the district. If we don't trust them to make a $15,000 decision, then I feel as though that's not very respectful of them.
Well, Ms.
My,
And doesn't-
my opinion.
And doesn't
No offense
Andrea,
here, but
doesn't Andrea already manage $3 million of title funds,
Hired
correct?
us to watch over the budget.
It's not coming out of
So
taxpayer
why
dollars.
is it on the agenda tonight for us to
Because
approve?
it's not for us to approve tonight, it's pulled, we're gonna approve, it's
Or
gonna be
is
back.
it for us to approve tonight?
Just have discussion.
No, just discussion.
It was on the consent
I
agenda.
pulled it,
All right. It was on there for us to approve.
correct.
Right. So is that micromanaging? No.
I
Question
just,
for you.
and I understand your
Mrs.
point.
Matthews keeps saying that this 15,000 was earmarked by the state for a speaker?
No, I was saying those dollars that they have for professional development is earmarked, and that can be used, that's what we're
We can use it
using.
For anything for professional development, but it doesn't have to be for a speaker.
No, we do use those funds in a variety of ways. When we pull teachers to do trainings, we bring in all kinds of different speakers on different occasions with different, and vendors. Our piece, when, I think what Mrs., I can't speak for her, but those dollars have to go towards professional development.
Right.
So that Title II-A has to be about that or supporting the supplemental resources for it. So for instance, if we're providing a training, we can buy the workbooks or the manuals or whatever's needed to carry out that training to continue to invest in our staff. That's what those dollars are kind of earmarked for. So no, there is not a particular value that has to go towards a guest speaker or things like that. I will tell you, in recent years, we've had to minimize the amount of pullout where we are paying for teachers to do training during the day because we can't get subs. That was a massive issue that we've had over the last number of years. I can't put that on the buildings to try to cover 20 classrooms in a day to pull a department and do department work. We've gone to some of these after-school committees. Jeremiah at the department heads, our instructional coaches have taken on a lot of that. So there is that pot of money that is there where it's a larger balance than we have had in past years because of that.
Let me also make one other comment, Mr. Davidson. You know, you said it was on the agenda tonight for a vote. Yes, it was. I was contacted about it, and I saw the chain of emails. You asked for, or Dr. Kopis, I believe, asked for it to be polled. That typically happens during the meeting. Thank you for doing it beforehand. But I think we all knew we were pulling that from the agenda tonight.
My state,
Is that correct? That you knew that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank
But it was on the agenda for us to approve.
It
I'm
was.
not here to rubber stamp what the administration does. Maybe you do. We're here to question.
Mr. Davidson,
This is a cost, 15,000 to the.
15,000 out of a 200 and how many $1 million budget? You don't trust these people to make that
That's
decision?
a fourth of a teacher's salary right there for somebody to speak for 3 hours.
Fine,
So-
okay, here's the bottom line is, we've had the discussion, we know how you feel, we know how you feel. It will go on the business meeting for the next meeting.
That's, I think, my ask is, do we want to see that item on the next agenda? If not, I just need parameters, because that has changed from what it was before. Before we put that on there, it was an approval or not based on what that was. We've approved those speakers every time we've had that showcase. If that's, I just need to know the will of the board if we are to move forward with putting that on. There were concerns that were brought, which is why I pulled it tonight. I didn't feel that the board had enough information to be able to make that decision. Our next board meeting is November 14th. And so that's kind of what I put in my email as well today, that we would discuss it with no action taken tonight to then move forward on November 14th with that being an agenda item, or I need to go back to the committee and say the board is not comfortable with that. That's kind of where I'm trying to figure out where my lane is on.
Well, I think I would put it on the agenda for the 14th. And Mrs. Baker, I understand your opinion, and I promise you, it is not a matter of trust in the administrators. I do trust our administrators. But let's be clear, I reserve the right to question anything that I'm not familiar with or that I don't understand.
I do not question that.
Okay.
Dr. Kopis. What I am saying is, we need to keep in mind, and I know you do not like it when I say this, but remember what our role is as a board. It is not to do the day in and day out operations of this district.
I understand what you think the role is of a board
It
member.
is the role that's approved at the Ohio School Board Association.
I understand.
I'm sorry.
Well, you don't have to apologize. I mean, I can read also.
Yes.
I just don't fully agree with that.
Well, that's fine. You don't have to agree with it.
Thank
But
you.
we have to do what is the will of the board,
Yes, we do.
and not everybody on the board necessarily agrees with that.
I understand. And Mrs. Blevins, I think it's wonderful that you have a committee that seeks feedback. I would suggest you consider this option. Before you plan these professional developments, why don't you seek input to see what the teachers want as professionals? And you may do that.
We actually also meet with HCTA annually prior to any of that.
Okay.
To get feedback on what would they like to see.
Yes.
That is a completely teacher-driven committee.
Well, I think that's very appropriate.
They come together, Katie actually surveys her people outside of our survey, just to make, sometimes there's different things that in that moment that there are other pieces. So we do have that process in place, and I will tell you, this showcase and the structure of that is the number one requested that we hear over and over and over.
Well,
Dr. Kopus, have you been to that showcase?
I have not.
I would highly suggest you do. It's well done. And the teachers seem to, and all of the feedback I've gotten from the teachers, love it. Love it.
Well, I
I don't think anybody's questioning the
I understand that.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, what Mrs. Blevins is asking for is if we get a line item on something, are we gonna have to bring every one of those line items through the board so that we can discuss it and she has to go back?
If there's a question about it, yes.
Yeah,
I think so.
that's not, I'm trying to find out, are there parameters of what, because that was can we make this, can we take this off the consent to allow discussion? I think most of you know by now, I'm a very organized and prepared person. I want to make sure you have the information before. What, after my conversation with Dr. Kopus became abundantly clear was, hey, he didn't have all the information to make that informed decision.
I did
So
not.
my piece at putting this on here was, one, to find out what is that process that the board would like to see? Is there a threshold of, hey, I don't want to see, if there's a professional development over X, Y, and Z, we would like this to be a discussion item prior to a vote. And that's been our process for a lot of other things. We go to a work session, allow you some time to research and process prior to taking a vote. And that's an adjustment. And again, Dr. Kopus is one of 5 board members, but I want to make sure that we are, as a collective board, having that conversation. And that's why this process was changed.
Let me ask another question. Of the funds that are set aside for teacher development, how much of that, 200,000 is going for this particular showcase?
Less than 20% right now. The only dollars that are attributed to this at the moment are for our keynote speaker, because we leverage our community resources. We do have another pot of money that focuses on student wellness and staff wellness that will help with some of last year we were able to get community vendors in there to kind of shower our teachers with, different coupons, different events for them to really show that their wellness matters. So that is a different pot of money. When it comes to our professional development, there might be an additional $5,000 total for vendors that we have to pay to come in and do some of that. I do want to acknowledge, I do try to be a 100% good steward of, whether they're local dollars or state dollars, that doesn't matter to me. Money is money. I understand that, and I understand that question. Even when we first started the showcase, we would pay, let's say, $7,000 to $10,000 for these keynote speakers, and they would come in 45 minutes and they would leave. I really struggled with that. That's a lot of money. Now, that includes travel. There's all kinds of things that are baked into those, and those are very standard in the field. However, I have really advocated for, I don't just want a keynote. They need to be interacting with our staff and more than just that whole session. So we negotiated, which would have been a larger cost at a discounted rate for him to stay and do breakout sessions. So less than 20% of that entire $200,000 is going to this particular event, and this is our biggest PD that we have of the year.
And that's in January.
January, yes.
So that's 200,000. When do we have to use that by?
Well, it just got dropped in. Jeremy, do you want to share?
So we have to encumber those funds by June 30 and spend those funds by the end of September. Those funds are on a federal calendar. So the state calendar is just like we are, July 1 to June 30, and then they allow us like a 3-month run out to spend those dollars, and then we have to submit what's called an FER, a federal expenditure report,
I thought these were
detailing
state
all of those.
funds.
There's state and federal funds.
It comes through the state of Ohio. Title II is a federal program.
But the
So
state
it-
is the fiscal agent that
Yeah.
orders it to us.
We do get state and federal funds, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. Those are federal dollars that flow through the state. We also get several state grants, and those flow through the state as well. But the federal pieces are all 7/1 through June 30. And then, like I said, we get 3 months to spend those dollars out, and then we have to do a report that details all of those expenditures, and then we have to submit that back. And then we get audited on those as well.
So at the end of when, in that this coming September 2025,
Yes.
if we don't spend all of that money, then it goes back to the state and the Fed.
So the way that works is it doesn't necessarily go back. We don't have to write them a check for that. But
Okay.
what they say, let's say we've got 200 grand to spend, and we spend 150. Well, the Fed says, you don't need 200 grand. You need 150. So next year's allocation
Make it less.
is 150.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
And then what if that year you use all 150, you go back to the 200 next year?
No,
You always stay at 100?
Yeah, we wouldn't have the option for that, because they're gonna give you what you spend. So that's why we need to use those dollars somehow, and it does have a limited use. So if it's not gonna be a speaker, we'll have to figure it out, but we're gonna use those dollars.
And we're trying to be very, very clear stewards of that, of we're not going out and trying to find a flashy name or just something to spend the money. I'm always a person, we have to be intentional about that. This really does feed into our focus and purpose of where we've been and where we're going. And that was why the committee chose that person. And I put that out there to them of, I want very clear criteria for why we're picking. Just a few weeks ago, Middletown also had one. That speaker's price tag was the exact same as the person that we're, just for perspective, to give you that. I agree with you. I say all the time, man, you could go out and make a killing in some of these areas. Even when we're picking speakers, so President Baker mentioned a speakers bureau. That's what we partner with to help us find who these are by subjects, by reference. You don't ever want to be the person that puts someone on stage that's not been tried and true, or you don't know enough information. So we vet them quite a bit. They have tiered levels, kind of price points. There are 5 price points, $60,000 and up, $50,000 and up. This particular person's price tag is in that second tier. Our last speakers have been on the top end of that first tier. So we are right in that ballpark with where we have been previously.
Well, Mrs. Blevins, again, I appreciate all of your thought and effort there. And if you tell me that you're confident that that's what our teachers want, then I will support that, because I certainly support our staff. And I do trust your judgment. But please don't interpret that as though I'll never question it.
And I told you that from the jump. I have no problem ever questioning, and I will always,
And you always answer
I
very
always will.
professionally,
The
yes.
only reason that we changed the scope of this was I did not feel that Dr. Kopus was comfortable, or that all of us as a board really understood where these dollars were from in order to make that decision. That is the entire reason why, because that's a change in what it had been before. It was just, we put it on the consent, we approved it, and we went from there.
And I agreed with you on that. I
Yes,
said,
and so that was
should call it.
why the decision was made to bring this to a work session, so we can have this conversation. And then that helps me and our team to know where to take this in the future. What does that look like?
Ms. Blevins, I just want to applaud you guys and the administrative team for I've been to the showcase a number of times, and I've been around this district enough to know that we have a lot of things that not every teacher can walk away with something.
Right.
And I've sat through a lot of professional development, as I'm sure you have, that you go, this has nothing to do with me, but I'm here anyway. When I had more information, and we had this discussion last night, when I had more information about what this gentleman brings to the table, I can't see that there isn't a teacher in the district that won't walk away with some new knowledge, some validation about what they do in every day. I can't think of, I know the $19,000 payout is or what, 15,000, but Dr. Kopus said, I want to pay this much for that, and I just pulled up a speaker, a former president, who's making $400,000 for it. Now, if we might have a problem with $400,000, but there is a price to pay to bring people in with a specific knowledge base, and I understand that. And I understand that it's not cheap, just like everything else. But I want to thank that committee for listening to teachers and listening to, trying to find out what can best influence our district, have an impact on the district. And everything I'm hearing, it sounds like that's going to happen. I'm very comfortable with that. And I
Okay, so
think
it
it's-
sounds like we will have this on the business agenda for the next meeting in November?
November 14th.
Okay. And I hate to do this, but I had plans that I'd asked Mrs. Matthews to run the meeting tonight because I did have a conflict, but I wanted to come in for this discussion. So with that, I'm not sure how I just hand it off, but I'm going to hand it off to Mrs. Matthews to finish the remainder of the meeting. And thank you for your all the information that you've given, and hopefully Dr. Kopis has got his questions answered, and Mr. Davidson.
I will just as a follow-up, send out his bio,
I
so
hope
you
your
have that
questions are
information. I think that's valuable for you to look at that and some sample videos. So I will put that out to the board as we go forward.
Okay. All right, sorry, thank you. Let the record
you.
show that I left. And Ty, sorry I'm gonna miss your presentation.
Before we move on, are you gonna put that on the consent agenda next time or a separate item?
That's
We can
what
do
the-
either, we can do either one.
Whatever the-
We can have it as a standalone if you would choose. I mean, it really doesn't matter.
You tell me.
After this discussion tonight, maybe it should be a standalone.
It might make sense to make it a separate.
That's
That
fine.
way,
I'll have it
during
as
the
a
meeting,
standalone.
we're not having to
We'll have
pull
it
it
as,
off.
we'll have it as standalone.
Yep, we'll put it as a standalone item.
Next item on the agenda is that as we continue our building updates, we have Hamilton High School's freshman campus administration here tonight to give us an update on, all the wonderful things going on at the freshman campus. I'm sure they're going to talk about their house system and how that's helping students thrive. So I'm going to turn this over to Ty Smallwood and his team.
We'll turn ours on too.
All right, I won't do karaoke this time. All right, so we are excited to present to you today. Last year we presented in May, and we had the opportunity to kind of switch out with an elementary to give the board and hopefully the community an update on some of the things that we've been working on at the freshman campus. We're really super proud of the work that we're doing, that our staff is doing. Andrea always says, like, all arrows pointing in the same direction. And to be honest, this year, the class of 2028 has surprised us. In all honesty, I'm kind of waiting for the ball to drop because they're making incredible progress. We're going to talk, that's all right. We've done it long enough. We're ready. But we're really excited about this update. So first, I'd like to thank the Board of Education for all of your support. Superintendent Holbrook, again, thank you for all of your service to our district and really setting up a foundation for success for our secondary schools. You're always a wealth of knowledge on really anything related to high school. You've been a wealth of knowledge there. And then incoming Superintendent Blevins, we are really excited to work with you and your vision, especially with your instructional department. Every time Julie Arnold speaks, I'm like, as you say, ready to run through a wall because we're really excited to improve outcomes. It's not just about show for us, it's about actually changing kids' lives. So the title of our presentation tonight is Every Student, Every Day. And just as a little aside, the Harry T. Wilkes dinner last night, I walk out of that every single time super inspired. I'm really upset at the board for not doing a standing ovation. I was the only one standing when the Fine Arts Department presented. I just get so inspired by the teachers and the stories. And every person up there, some of them I've worked with, they believe in this message. And this is hard work. If you really want to have a touch point with every student every day, and not let kids fall through the cracks. This is the work that you have to do, and it is not easy. And it's really important to have a supportive team. I wanted to bring 50 students here last year, and Andrea told me that was kind of crazy. So we did bring some student representatives last year in May. So our mission pretty much remains the same. We want every FC student to be on track for graduation, not only just on track with credits, but having the skills and a plan for beyond. It's something that we live every single day. I have a lot of catchphrases that I say in the building that the students will roll their eyes at, but we will often hear them mocking me, which means it's sinking in. And they can probably roll their eyes too, because I'm really about this crew and a cause mission, because we want those students right there. In fact, last year they walked into Superintendent Holbrook's office, and we had students who had never been to the board office that, like, what does a board do? Is this the superintendent's office? And they saw themselves for the first time as future leaders of our community. And that's what we try to embrace every single day at the freshman campus. So when it comes to progress, we do a lot of things. I think if you would just follow us on social media, which we'll show you a few of these things, you would see a lot of flashy things. You would see kids really excited to be at school. Our attendance rate this year is at 93%. For a high school, that's almost unheard of. It's higher than pre-COVID. It's the highest that we really have in recent record. Kids are showing up to school. Now there's a few bugs going around, so the attendance might dip a little. But this is the progress that we actually look at behind the scenes. There's a ton of work. I like to compare it to like Moneyball. We use like sabermetrics for students. We have so much data, and Superintendent Holbrook has said this as well. We have 9 to 10 years of data on these students when it comes to test scores. We can get really predictive and proactive with students and make sure they have the right interventions to be supported. With academic progress, we look at a balance of NWA MAP scores and freshmen on track. So there's a lot of abbreviations in education. That's one of them. NWA MAP measures their skills in English and math. And then freshman on track is the number of credits they're attaining. We look at on track as 5 high school credits or more. Many of our students have no problem with that because they take high school credits in 8th grade. And no more than 1 failing grade in freshman year. So that's a huge portion of our message. We say freshman on track. It's become kind of a moniker of what the freshman campus is all about. But we also want to see students improving skills. Anyone can give a student an A and pass them along. In fact, I think a lot of urban districts have created creative solutions just to pass the kids through, and they're not actually improving kids' skills. And so MAP gives us a great touch point on our kids actually growing. And then with PBIS and behavior, again, the tiered fidelity inventory through the state of Ohio tells us how well we're doing with positive behavior intervention systems. But with discipline, it gives us a good balance point. If our discipline is going up and we're doing things that are too positive, we may have gone too far in the direction of making our schools unsafe. We need to make sure we have consistent expectations, and PBIS is not just about handing out lollipops. It's about like really making sure that we're consistently moving kids forward with their character and their behavior. So let's see how we're doing on those marks.
All right, so with the freshman on track, like Mr. Smallwood just said, it is having no more than 1 failing grade in your freshman year. And as you can see, over the last 4 years, we're very excited. Last year, we finally made it to our goal, which was 95%, which has been our goal since Smallwood and I have started there, and ISGRO has really jumped on board with us, which we're excited. And I cannot express to you how excited we were to bring our staff back this fall and say, we actually did it. Like, the kids did it, you worked, they were engaged, they did it. So that means that at the end of last year, there were only 36 students who were off track for graduation, which last year we had a very large class. So I feel very good about that. We were excited. But like you said, we want to make sure we're not just passing, they're not just earning the credits, but they're learning the skills. So when we look at our MAP scores last year, in this one, which is the K-12 test, which are special education and ESL students, if you see that little orange diamond, that is where their projected growth was supposed to be, which was a 4, and we got 9 points average. So that is more than double the projected, so we're thrilled. This one is for our pre-algebra and algebra students. There's no orange diamond because MAP has not standardized it yet. However, if you look, this is 10 points, so they grew even more than the other graph. And finally, our geometry students had 20-point growth, which is just crazy. No one really gets that much growth. So just a shout out to Chris Erickson. He is our head geometry teacher, and he grows students at an unbelievable rate, obviously. So our math department as a whole is just so focused on the standards and making sure that they're making good growth, and they do. They are mentoring the students and building the skills. Our English department does have that orange diamond, so all of our English students take the same test. So they were projected at about a 3-point growth, and they got 7. So again, more than double their projected growth. Our English department really overcame last year. We adjusted the schedule so they didn't have a reading block anymore, but they still got the growth. It was impressive to see them adjust their schedule, their needs, and still meet the goals.
Okay, along with the academic growth comes the behavioral growth as well. And what we have seen, this is also adjusted for enrollment because last year we had 100 students more. It was a very large class. And I know we talked a lot about this in May, but our major office manager referrals were way down. We saw a 23% decrease in fights, 71% decrease in recommendations for expulsion, which is huge. And what we really attributed that to is the process that we have put in place for our PBIS teams. Each student belongs to their house. Their teacher teams in that house really get in front of a lot of the things and put interventions in place before it ever gets to the three of us. And you know, you have to credit our staff with a lot of this. This is not just the three of us, it is our staff driven. This is our tiered fidelity. This is another one of the alphabet soups, TFI. What you can see is back in 22, we were way down below 20%. 2 years later, we're now up over 80%. We are really seeing the results out of our students, out of our staff. It has been an absolute team effort. I mean, even our Safe and Secures get involved with our Tier 2 PBIS stuff with students. It's amazing. We put in for our bronze level last year. We plan on applying for our silver level this year. If anybody knows how that works, that's a lot of paperwork, a lot of keeping track of all the things that we do and sitting in Ty's office and going through everything. All right.
A little backtrack music for you here. So how do we level up? That was kind of a question we had. We hit 95% of students on track. We had some room to grow in our MAP scores, and I think we will continue to do that. But really getting a hook. If you ever work with teenagers, they have to have a hook and a why. So the left is last year's. I'm gonna go back and just play it for dramatic fashion. The left is last year's. Oh no. There you go. And we did a pretty good job. I think the kids were kind of into it. But the right is this year's. Our students came back, and we had an entire week where we just went over our expectations. We kind of hit them with all the rules like you would in a typical school. And then we end with a house assembly. And I honestly couldn't believe how much our kids were into this. These are kids that post-COVID have been really hard to reach. And we had a big assembly and celebrated houses. And House Nuxall, named after famous Hamiltonian Joe Nuxall, as you can see, celebrating their victory there for our first assembly. So we like to really mix a good amount of fun to get kids to be there, along with those strong academics. So a nod to Superintendent Holbrook here. He said, why don't you level up 4 core and make it 1 more? Let's get these kids more credits. And I'm like, Mike, we've got 95% of them on track. I mean, this is really hard work. So we did. We leveled it up. We're going to do 4 core and 1 more. We want our students to not only be on track for graduation, but take some of those electives that actually could prepare them for their futures, and honestly, things that they're interested in. Some of the feedback from the students was, hey, we're doing financial literacy, gym, PE, all the grad requirements, but we want a class with something that we have a passion in, like art or something of that nature. And so we wanted to make sure that 95% of our students have 4 core, and now we're adding the 1 more. And that's all informed through data-informed systems. So we have a very extensive process of tracking that, which we'll review quickly in a second. Our English department, even though we did have growth on average, if you look at the percentage of students who actually met their target, we did take a slight dip. And so the question to our BLT in the summer was, what do we do differently? And the consensus amongst everyone on our staff was like, cell phones have become a giant issue. I know everyone's trying to figure that out. And the great thing about our staff is that we did have a strong consensus that we wanted to ban cell phones and create a creative, progressive discipline policy to address that. That doesn't exclude students from school, but we have a great system for that, which would take a whole nother meeting to describe. But we now have students that have books in their hands instead of phones. So students in our building, as part of our reading initiative, have to check out an independent reading book, and that's the big push right now. So in 4th period, every single student in our building for 10 to 15 minutes is reading a book. Our circulation numbers are through the roof, and we expect more students reading to have an impact on their MAP growth.
Okay, we've already talked about our math growth. That's really hard to say. But Mr. Derrickson right there, big shout out to him. He had a 100% of his geometry students scored passing on the air test, which is unbelievable, really, because that's a very, very difficult test. We saw some tremendous growth as well in our pre-algebra and algebra courses, and we're seeing that across the board this year as well. Students are already achieving quite well on both of those levels. Social studies has really been a focus this year for us. They have done an amazing job. They, as a team, have come together. They've done diagnostic testing. They rewrote a lot of their common assessments. I actually just met with them yesterday. They are line item on tests right now, breaking down questions, really kind of going over stuff with each other and kind of figuring out, what is it that we need to do. One of the things I would like to say about what history teachers are, they are doing some cross-curricular stuff with our ELA teachers, our English teachers right now. They have partnered with them, and they are now using the AIR writing rubric for ELA 2 test, and they are using that to grade writing in their history classes to kind of give students that substantive feedback earlier and kind of help them students move on into 10th grade as well when they're going to have to take those tests for real. We also have our History of Hamilton elective. Mr. Marcello and Mr. Robinson now are partnering with that. Kids really like this class. It's amazing when they come back from a field trip and they talk about all the things about Hamilton that they've lived here and have no idea about. And it has really kind of grown this year a lot. We still have our One Hamilton and our 17 Strong groups. They meet twice a month. They really are involved in the community, and what we're seeing now with our students is they are becoming more about their community of Hamilton and not just, coming to school and going home. So we're really enjoying these, what we're seeing this year.
All right, I'm always excited to present about science because I did teach science for 10 years, so I was excited about this. Physical science is one of the hardest courses for our kids, honestly. It's freshman year, it is a challenging curriculum, the standards are hard, every year the kids have struggled. So the past 2 years, our science department has really put in the work to just change the curriculum. They are just upping the engagement. The rigor is still there, it is still challenging, but they are having them build bottle rockets and then track them. They are putting actual engaging projects in there, which is making the kids buy in to want to learn so they can do the project. And I will say it's been a challenge. Last year was hard. They came to us, they said, this is working, this isn't, and we reflected and they refined it, and it's going even better this year. But I just can't, they really put in the work because it's a hard course. I've taught it before, it's not that fun to teach sometimes. It's a challenge, but they're doing great. And with that, they are also adding in the literacy, just like social studies. The teachers in every department are working together to really support the goals of the kids. That English 2 assessment is hard. We're trying to get reading as many places as we can to make sure we can build them up and make them ready for that. All right, so then the 4 core and 1 more, the electives. So this year we were really excited to bring the electives back. Last year we kind of had some limited options just with scheduling and that kind of stuff, but this year we got to bring back journalism and creative writing and things, and our students are enjoying them. And they're just getting that one period a day where they get to do something that they're excited about. And with that, to get the students in the classes they wanted, our counselors went through and hand scheduled every single student this year, which I don't know if you understand how much time that took, but it was an impressive challenge. Smallwood and it was really his idea, and we were like, I don't know that you can do that. And then we did it. And I have to tell you that it was worth it. The number of students requesting schedule changes and things like that has decreased, and it's just the kids are in the right seats. They're in with the right classes and the right electives, but it was a challenge, and our counselors really rose to the occasion and took the time and did it. So we're just very happy with how that went.
So I don't know if you realize how high school scheduling works, but it typically goes into an algorithm in a program called Dazzle. It's through SWOCA, and kids are just thrown in. So you have a teacher say, 6th period class is rough, 3rd period class is like, great, we're singing songs, it's awesome. I had the idea, I kind of sketched it out. We have some of the most organized counseling team, and Ms. Eichenberger is phenomenal with this. Every single student in our building got a hand schedule. People said that's not possible. We looked at a few districts that had tried it with a much smaller population, and I want to shout out Andrea's work in the elementary, because I'm like, I've seen it happen in elementary. I think we can make it happen. They thought we were crazy. But it's created balanced schedules. We have no more than 3 or 4 students who have some behavior difficulties in each class, and our teachers are really shouting us out for that. So that extends to our English language learner and special education. We make sure that they have customized schedules so that they're supported, that they're building cultural competency. We do Hispanic Heritage Month. We really try to embrace our ELs because there's a significant number that have come to us in the last several years. And we're really trying to be on the cutting edge of developing their language and academic skills. Along with that, with special education, every student in our building builds a superhero's journey. So they call themselves the superheroes in their own journey. We do student-led conferences, but we want our students with IEPs to not look at that IEP as a crutch, but as something where a whole team is coming together to support them and their future planning. And so we're really leaning into that transition section with our special education and student-led conferences. Okay, so here's kind of like the nuts and bolts, and then we're wrapping up. The Moneyball aspect, all of the data that we use, and I know a lot of times we do all the flashy stuff that you might see on the outside, but the background work on hand scheduling, on tracking every single kid's data has gotten even better this year. I've been asking Abre for about a decade to build more custom reports for us to predict which students are off track early. And they said that they're having issues with the Dazzle sync, and I'm like, I don't care, get it done. And finally, I think the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And we've been able to create weekly reports for students that are off track so that we're not waiting until the interims and the quarters anymore or the semester to recover credits. We have teacher teams working with students who are failing in real time. These are kids that are going through tough things that sometimes slip through the cracks, but we can get in front of them early, get them into some type of intervention, and make sure that they're supported. And that's a big piece of this 95%. And with behavior data tracking, as Mr. Isgro said, our first quarter office referrals, the yellow is this year, have significantly gone down. Again, that's due to the work of our teacher teams. And then our 3-year trend for out-of-school suspensions is at an all-time low. So more kids in classes, more kids on track, more kids prepare for their future, more kids engaged in the community. We could go on and on. The FC's killing it due to the work of our staff.
Well, thank you guys so much for the presentation. I think it was great, phenomenal, as we knew it would. And as they say, numbers don't lie. So, you know, you guys definitely have shown that, and that the students are engaged and they're excited. And I think that them getting that specific, tailored to them, custom schedule, I think that just says a lot about your willingness for you and your team to put that kind of dedication and hard work in. And that is truly, I couldn't imagine, you know, doing that and making sure that you try to balance the scales as you showed in your presentation to make sure that that everyone has what they need. I think that's phenomenal. So I applaud you guys for that, and just, you know, tremendously say thank you guys for taking that initiative and just taking the time to do that, not just leaving it up to just, you know, the systems that be, but taking that time and initiative to do that and making sure that that learning is fun. So I definitely so appreciate that and say thank you guys for coming and giving such a great presentation and let us know what's going on at the FC. Appreciate it.
I want to start off by thanking you for hosting Dr. Kopis and I on the first day of school at your building. And I really enjoyed it, and I know Dr. Kopis did. And that was eye-opening for me. I mean, it's a first day of school, these kids walking in scared to death.
Yeah.
And then watching your staff work to make these kids feel like, hey, you know, it's going to be all right.
We got you, yeah.
And it was great. It was a great experience. And I've told you in the past, you have the most difficult building where you're bringing kids from Garfield and Wilson in. And historically, it's been, you know, we've had discipline problems because of that. And you've dealt with that, and you don't have it. You and Mr. Isgro showed us that, you know, the numbers are down, and it's what you're doing there. And your program with the electives, when I was touring your building, we went to the engineering room where the robotics were, and that was just amazing. And they have that 3D printer, and that giving the students starting in 9th grade the opportunity to work with robots and program these robots and make things with a 3D printer is just amazing. And I just think you guys are doing a great job up there or over there and getting these kids ready for high school and beyond. And thank you.
I just want to thank you. We're on the same page. What I'm hearing you present tonight is incredible. Like you said, the problem has always been you're one and done.
Mm-hmm.
you're one and done. The kids walk in. So when I see that growth and I see getting those kids on track, you don't have the chance to do that over 2 or 3 years. Well, some of the kids, I don't know, but you have 1 year to do that. And that is indicative of the staff buying into what you're doing and making a difference in these kids' lives. Because if you don't catch them then, if they're getting behind in 9th grade, we all know that it's going to take a longer time to get them caught back up. So I appreciate that very much. I also am impressed with the hand scheduling. As a principal a long time ago, in the Stone Age, we had tablets we would chip out.
Right.
And so, yeah, but hand scheduling is a mess. And I applaud your counselors on taking that on, because that means every kid has a schedule that's meaningful to them. And when I saw what you're doing and all the electives, there's been studies about if you don't have those electives that the kids get excited about coming to school, they're not going to come. And when I see your attendance rate at 93%, I've got to think that has something to do with it, because kids are doing, I mean, math is fun. I'm not pushing, down on math, but if they didn't have that opportunity to study hard for math and then go to music or art or robotics or something like that, they're not going to, it doesn't go. And that gives them that drive. The last thing is the you don't call it history of Hamilton. I've heard so many good things about that. Yeah. And if I understand, I'm sorry, who's teaching that? Is that
Chris Marcello and
Chris
now
is-
Dallas Robinson. So
Okay.
Chris is passing the torch a little bit to
yeah,
Dallas.
and
now,
they're
yeah.
bringing in guests, right?
Every week.
And
Mayor Moeller played rock, paper, scissors with our
that's
students
what I
in the
heard.
hallway.
Yeah, that's where I heard it, because he said it was just such an enjoyable time being with the kids and talking about what's making the city great. I'm glad we're bringing that back, because years ago, we still do it, we have Civics Day.
Sure.
And sometimes that Civics Day is the first time kids see what the city is all about. I remember my son going through, and he goes, I didn't really want to come back to Hamilton, but this is kind of a neat place, and it's gotten even better. And you just assume kids know what's going on, but when they see the history and where Hamilton has been, and we have an extremely rich history here, and where we're going, it gives them a lot of excitement, gives them community pride. So I think it's a great program. I hope, we need to keep that going. But I want to thank you for all your hard work over there, you guys too, and all the teachers at the freshman school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Smallwood, I want to echo what my fellow board members have said. Your numbers are very impressive. Your behavioral PBIS numbers are great. Your growth academic is incredible, and like Mr. Sprague said, your 93% attendance is very impressive. And that tells me that you have an environment there where your students are comfortable and they want to be there. And also, to talk about the history of Hamilton class, Mr. Marcello is such a proponent of your facility and of our community and the history of Hamilton, and he does such a good job of promoting that. He's been kind enough to invite me to speak twice in that class. I hope he asks me back, because I'm sure I enjoy it probably more than the students do. But the interaction that I've had with those students is really incredible, and it's really impressive. I've benefited from some of their comments, and hopefully they've benefited from a few of the things I've shared. But I do have a story to tell you about your vice principal. The first time I visited your school, even though I had a badge that allowed me into your building, she had no clue who I was. And she challenged me and told me almost to get the heck out, which is her job. And I kind of put my hands up and said, wait a minute, I know Mr. Smallwood, he said it was okay to come by, and she finally let me in the building. But she was on top of it, so you were doing a great job, Megan, so I thank you for that. But congratulations on your success. Don't rest on your laurels. Keep planning for improvement. And obviously, Mr. Smallwood, I'm proud of you for a number of reasons, but thank you for what you're doing.
Ty, Todd, Megan, I first want to thank you for your leadership. I think the building and the entire dynamics of that building is one of the most challenging buildings in the district to run, from having students for 9 months. And embracing the house system, I think, is critical because it's student engagement. How do we get students that are 14, 15 years old, engaged, all in the same building for 9 months? That's what you walked into. And you've done an incredible job getting them engaged and interested and doing that in fun and different ways. But still, the main focus is the main focus. And I think that I was in your building a couple weeks ago and just walking around, and the kids identify with those houses. They really do. You know, because I asked a couple kids, what house are you in? And they wanted to tell me all about it. And that just shows me that there's a quick identifier. The kids need a sense of purpose. They need a sense of belonging. They're coming from 2 different buildings. They're coming from places that they've never interacted with one another before coming into your building. So you've quickly been able to develop that. And so I think that is a critical component along with a lot of other things, but that whole sense of belonging and engagement piece, I think, is critical to what you've been doing, and I'm sure you're going to be successful moving forward. Thank you.
I have one more question real fast. I know Nuxall is one house. What's the other houses?
Mr. Marshall actually helped with this. He put together a list of 20 different house names, and then staff had some input on like which house they wanted to do. Like Lindsay Wilkie was all about Wilkes because that's the root of her name. So we have Bailey, Beckett, Hurst. So Jim Boxcar Bailey, Beckett, of course, being a ubiquitous name in Hamilton. And then we have Hurst. Nellie Hurst was actually unknown to me at the time, but was a phenomenal author and writer from Hamilton. We wanted to make sure we had good representation. McCloskey, after Robert McCloskey. And we have Nuxall and then Wilkes. We have 6 teams, and it's worked out perfectly with staffing. And again, that's a nod to our HR department for helping us getting that going.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if there's a Hallbrook or not.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay, all right, thanks.
That's next, I guess. All right, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we'll call this meeting to order of our open session, and we'll close out our work meeting.
Just fine with me.
I was gonna say keep going.
Well, yeah, it'll be 5-minute meeting.
Yeah, we'll keep rolling. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll call. Yep, call to order. If you wanna, we'll do a pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll accept the motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll. Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Kopus?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
Thank you. And then if I could have a motion to approve our minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We'll have a roll call, please. Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Kopus?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes.
I don't see anyone here from city council.
What was, city council, I was with, I'm sorry, with Michael Ryan. And there's some confusion with council when we have our meeting, you know, like, typically they would be here at 6 or 7. And they've showed up a couple times and we've already been gone. He really wants to present to the board what's going on with the rail situation. And I told him I would bring it up tonight to Mr. Holbrook about, you know, maybe scheduling that with him.
Yeah, have Michael reach out to me. We can actually schedule that on a work session, and that way we can give him a definite time. That would probably be the easiest way to do that. I have his cell phone. I can give him a call as well.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson, for the update. I don't have anything for public participation. Do we have any superintendent's comments?
Yes, couple things. Tuesday evening, I had the privilege of attending the Hamilton Community Foundation's annual meeting. the positive impact that the Community Foundation has made in the Hamilton community over the last 25 years is absolutely extraordinary. And on behalf of the district, I want to thank John Gaduli, Katie Braswell, and the rest of the Community Foundation staff for making such a positive impact, not just on Hamilton City Schools, but also on the entire Hamilton community. And we're grateful to have such a supportive Community Foundation. And then last night, I went to one of my favorite events of the year, the Hamilton Celebrates Education event. And that is such a unique event, a night where the community spotlights community educators. Not very many communities have the privilege of having such an event. The evening is sponsored by the Harry T. Wilkes Foundation and honored 19 school employees, 13 from Hamilton City Schools. The legacy of honoring education by Mr. Wilkes and the support of his foundation, along with the Hamilton Community Foundation, is just one of the many things that makes Hamilton a really special community. I want to congratulate all the educators recognized last evening and thank the Harry T. Wilkes Foundation and the Community Foundation for their continued support of our district, our students, and our community. I also want to remind everyone that tomorrow evening is senior night for our high school football team. We're very fortunate. We have already qualified for the playoffs and will have a home playoff game the following weekend, and a really successful season that we look forward to seeing what happens in the next several weeks. And this is just a reminder to anyone watching that on Tuesday, November 5th, Election Day, we do not have school for students. Our staff does have professional development that day, but our students are off on that day. Those are my comments for this evening.
Perfect. Thank you, sir, for that. Appreciate it. We also have next on our agenda, our district calendar, our first reading. We have no action on that.
That it is required to have 30 days between the first reading and the final reading for state, through the state for district calendars. This is just a first read for everyone to look at. A vote will be in December. We don't have enough days between now and the November meeting to meet the 30-day threshold.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then for our fine arts memorandum of understanding, we have our fine arts and supplemental are recommended for approval is presented.
I'd like to make a motion to accept that, to approve that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Frazier.
Dr. Kopus,
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sprague,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Also, next on our agenda, we have our human resources, and we have received those in attachment. And I'll accept the motion for approval as presented.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Frazier, if you can call the roll.
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sprague,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Kopus.
Yes.
And next on our agenda is our consent agenda. If I could have a motion to accept that.
I have a comment on the consent agenda. Boy, as you go through this is truly phenomenal, all of the things that our student body can participate in. I just hope that parents are aware of this. I wish we could make sure that our community was aware of this, but yeah, what a tremendous job that our district does is exposing these kids to a number of different things, but that's extremely impressive to me.
Dr. Kopus, I think it's been a focus, at least for the last 10 years. I think exposure is everything. I think the more we can expose students to, both in the classroom and in the community, the better graduate we have. Our goal when someone graduates is for them to have opportunities to pursue whatever they want to do, and exposing them to a variety of different things, I think, is part of our responsibility with that. So we do have a great number of opportunities for students.
Certainly do.
If I could accept a motion to accept our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Already did.
Thank you. And next on our agenda, we have I'm sorry, a motion. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mr. Sprague,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Dr. Kopus,
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mrs. President Matthews, or Vice President Matthews, before we move on to the finance agenda, I would ask if we could go back and revisit City Council. We do have Michael Ryan that's just arrived, and maybe I think he's wanting to speak to us for a little bit about maybe the rail system.
Michael, before you got here, I told him about our conversation last night, and you were gonna get an invitation. You were gonna get an invitation to come to the work session.
That's
But
right.
glad you made it.
And going a little fast from Cincinnati, I was like, oh, please no trains, and I got caught. Good evening, school board. Hope all is well. It's nice to be back. And I appreciate a lot of the members coming to our State of the City to welcome Craig and his new team and his new tincture. So we are excited. Craig's doing a tremendous job. We are very pleased with him and his staff and his team that he's assembled. So great things are going to continue, and we're really looking forward to the future and continuing to grow a relationship with you guys. In regards to Amtrak, if you've noticed, we recently hired a passenger rail consultant out of Cincinnati. It's called ACOM. They're well-versed with passenger rail feasibility studies. This study is going to cost the city $30,000. And I've said this before, this is probably the best $30,000 that we will ever spend, because this is the only time that we're going to be faced with this situation right now. So we have an opportunity. We need to take full advantage of it. So this feasibility study has already started, and it's going to tell us ridership estimates here in town. It's going to tell us where we can put our station or stations or platforms and where we should put those. It's also going to provide us some additional data regarding the current state of passenger rail right here in Ohio. And it's also going to allow us to maneuver, the CSX situation and Norfolk Southern situation. So all of this will be completed in February. And at that time, that's when I'm going to ask ACOM to come to City Council and present their findings, because this is information council will need in order to make a reasonable decision moving forward. And we're going to have to see these numbers. They're going to put a price tag on some of this stuff. So we're going to see some numbers that are probably low in areas, higher in some. But this is critical that we see this, this data in order for council to make a reasonable decision to proceed. So also next year, the state's feasibility study for the 3C and D corridor will be completed here in the next 9 months or so. And we're hopeful that some positive results will be there for the state to make a decision to proceed. So it's going to be a big year next year in a lot of areas. So with that being said, Dan Bates and I from the Chamber have also teamed up to take our message, our pro-Amtrak message, to Columbus, November 20th. We have a bus leaving the Chamber, and we're hoping you guys can join. We're going to be taking stakeholders, other leaders, business owners to Columbus to have a meeting with Sarah Crothers, Senator Lang, and other state legislators that want to hear our pitch and why this is an important initiative, not only to the state, but importantly to Hamilton's future from an economic development standpoint and a business standpoint. So we're going to keep moving. We're passionate about it. We're excited about it. Got a long way to go, but hey, we keep getting over these hills and these bumps. So we're going to keep going until the state decides that they're no longer interested. So that's all I have.
Michael, I'm really grateful for the effort you put into this.
Thank you.
Put a lot of time, a lot of time into it. And your efforts single-handedly have gotten us to where we're at now.
Appreciate
This is
that.
good for Hamilton. It's good for the schools.
Yeah.
But it's going to be great economic development. I hope it happens. I think it will, because you'll make it happen.
Yeah.
And I do. I appreciate everything you've done with that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Michael, I appreciate you reaching out and letting us be a part of this. I mean, I think you reached out to us at the very beginning. We did a couple letter writing campaigns with our
absolutely.
government classes over the last 18 months. I hope that made somewhat of a difference. I think it did.
Oh, it did.
We did get some positive comments
Yeah.
from that through some of our legislators.
Good.
And so, please let us know how we can continue to help as you go through this process.
Absolutely. And I think we might do that again here in the new year, because this is when the state's really going to be taking a really hard look at this situation. So we want to keep the pressure on and show them, listen, our city is hungry for this. We are being teed up for a new beginning, a fresh start. A stronger Hamilton is a connected Hamilton, and that's exactly what we're striving
And I
to
think it's
do
really
here.
cool that kids can see
Yeah.
if this happens, they were a part of that, and that's really important.
Yeah.
That's really important. So-
Absolutely. So
so I
that's the
appreciate that.
dream.
Yeah,
Absolutely. We want
absolutely.
them, this is going to be for their benefit. And when they get, they're grade school now, some of the junior high folks, started now, they're graduating high school. So my hope is that when they come home from college or wherever, they'll be able to take the very train from their city back home and say, you know what? I had a piece of this. I had a part in this. I helped fight to get this in Hamilton. I'm writing that very thing. That's what we want. That's what we're gonna keep fighting hard for that. So
Thank you for all your work.
appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Pastor Shack had to step out this evening. So in the absence of a president or vice president, the secretary of the board, which is myself, shall call for a motion for a president pro temp. So I'll need a motion and a second to vote one of you gentlemen as the president to preside over the last couple meetings, or the last couple items of the agenda.
I make a motion that Mr. Davidson.
I second. All right, we got so much more to do. We'll move on to,
Don't get overwhelmed.
the finance agenda. Mr. Frazier?
Thank you, President Davidson. The finance agenda is extremely light this evening,
Thank
as it always is in October, as we wait for the November forecast presentation that we will have next month. I know everyone is looking forward to that, to me talking for half an hour about the district's finances. So what we have for you this evening is we have the normal treasurer reports, we have a cash position report and cash reconciliation. And then the only other item that we have on the agenda this evening is donations. We had an anonymous donation to high school athletics for $1,200. And then we also had a $500 donation to Hamilton High Cheer from Casey Jones. And those are the only items I have this evening.
I have a comment about the finance agenda. First of all, I want to publicly thank Mr. Frazier again for answering all the questions that I ask him on a monthly basis. I know he may be getting tired of that, but I do appreciate the explanation. I want to make sure that I'm interpreting this correctly because there's a lot of information. Am I correct in thinking that through September, from our general improvement fund, we have spent $1.75 million in keeping our schools in tip-top shape?
For the cash position report? The cash position report, is that what you're referring to? The PI fund? That's absolutely correct. So fiscal year to date expended $1.753 million. And we have another $639 that's currently on encumbrances, which
Yes.
means it's on a purchase order to be spent. And then we'll have the rest of the year as well to keep up our buildings and to purchase buses and those types of things.
And we were able to gain some funds into that because you brought some back from the facilities, didn't you?
Correct. So the board approved a resolution to allow me to go after some dollars that had been sitting at the state level. That was $627,000.
Well, I'm thankful that I'm starting to understand all those numbers, and that's why our facilities are in such great shape. So thank you, Mr. Frazier.
Absolutely.
We'll entertain a motion to accept his agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Davidson?
Yes.
Dr. Kopus?
Yes.
Mr. Sprague?
Yes. All right, the next meeting will be Thursday, November 14th, beginning at 4 o'clock here in this room. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.